Yearning for more than empty promises, I faced my dad's "I want to do better" spiel after years of neglect. It stung, especially after I graduated alone. I waited a month for him to notice. Now I'm left with memories and a heart full of confusion. Why does my absence seem easier? My parents are divorced. They have been since I was 4 or 5 years old, and now that I am 18, my relationship with my father has been distant for a while. They divorced because my mother was unfaithful, which I did not know until I was around 12 years old. However, they separated, and a year or two later both found new partners. My mother had several on and off boyfriends, while my father found his soon-to-be wife. They both remarried around the same time to their current partners. My stepmother brought children into the marriage, and I was very excited to meet them and become part of a family with them. I was still a child and simply happy to have new friends. I even welcomed my half-brother into the world because of her. I do love her. She is a very kind woman. However, with her arrival and the 4 new children and teenagers in my father's life, it felt like my 2 brothers and I were placed on the back burner. He would forget to pick us up or completely overlook that it was his weekend with us, asking if he could pick us up the following weekend instead because he was already home. He lived 15 minutes away. Initially, these occurrences were scattered. Things happen, time flies, and I understood things at the time. As the children got older, the oldest P moved out, and it became easier to accommodate the 3 kids who would visit more often. My old bedroom was converted into a shared room with my stepsister, which I did not mind as I thought bunk beds were very cool. We did fun activities together, we went on trips, we even took a road trip to Legoland once, and it was a blast. However, as time progressed, the pattern began again. They moved to another house, and while I still had my bunk beds, they stopped organizing family activities. They began to focus on getting my step-siblings involved in sports. This did not take over the weekends, but on most occasions when we visited, they had a sporting event to attend. I have never been particularly drawn to sports. I participated in some when I was younger, but nothing ever stuck. Still, I went to those events because I wanted to play with my step-siblings. We would still do things around the house. But as everyone continued to age, they decided to relocate again. My father spoke to me about converting an open office space into a closed bedroom for me, and I was thrilled at the prospect of having my own room at his home. I even went furniture shopping with them to choose a bed set along with my stepsister. But that never materialized. When they moved in and gave us the tour with all the furniture in place, where they had promised to put my bed was instead an office desk and chair. In hindsight, I realized it was impractical anyway. I was only there for 2 days every other week, so it did not make sense to give me a whole room. However, I don't understand why he filled me with that fantasy. My stepsister had her own room, while my belongings were crammed into the top drawer of the closet, next to the one stuffed animal they had given me. My bed was a slide-out bed tucked under my sister's bed and never had sheets. It was just covered with whatever blanket they had available, and one of her stuffed animals that I used as a pillow if I had not already taken the stuffed animal from the closet. It felt as though I was an unwelcome guest. The sports events occurred every weekend during our visits. Saturdays always had some event that needed attending, and all the young children would leave with their parents. Sundays were reserved for my father to play football with his friends, and the young kids attended that too. Consequently, family activities became few and far between. I was 13 at that time, and I was not enjoying my time with my siblings when we went out. I was more like a babysitter, so I did not find much joy in attending these events. This was also around the time when my father became increasingly forgetful about picking us up. Sometimes, the only reason we would be at his house was that my older brother, who had stopped going altogether, or my mother dropped us off. I believe this was when my mother lost her restraint regarding my father. She would often say that I needed to stop getting my hopes up when he called, or she would curse him if he told us he had something fun planned for that weekend, only to not show up. At that time, I always felt a little upset with my mother because he was still my father. I had faith in him to keep his promises. However, at some point, it simply clicked with me. He had forgotten us yet again, and while I was unpacking my things, I decided not to go anymore. It simply was not enjoyable. Yes, I got to see my stepmother, step-siblings, and my father for a little while, but mostly I was just moping in a house that did not feel like home. I stopped going. My second oldest brother continued to go for a bit. But when his breaking point came, we only visited on holidays or birthdays, and even those occasions sometimes turned into mere phone calls. The last time I saw him in person was at my stepbrother P's funeral and celebration of life in 2023. He passed away in a motorcycle accident, and my brother and I learned of it just after returning home from my stepfather's father's funeral. It was incredibly emotional for my siblings, not only dealing with back-to-back funerals but also the loss of our sibling. especially for my oldest brother, who was closest to P. I witnessed him cry for the first time before he could even enter the church. We comforted our step-family, cried for our brother, and for the first time in a long time my father and I hugged. He embraced me tightly, as if afraid I would disappear if he let go. It made me weep instantly, though it may have just been my emotional nature reacting. But I thought he might have also been afraid of losing me. At the celebration of life a few days later, he spoke to my brothers and me, expressing a desire to change and be more present, something we had heard before, but this time it seemed sincere. And I genuinely believed it. Perhaps I am simply a foolish moth drawn to the same shiny bug zapper. However, since then, I have not spoken to him. My mother and stepfather lost their jobs, and since I was approaching adulthood, they thought it was best to move back to her home state, closer to her stepsister, to live and re-establish ourselves. We have bounced back, but it has been over a year since our move. My father has visited the state several times to see his family, yet he has never visited us. It is a large state, and I would understand that it might be inconvenient, but he has not seen me even once since I became an adult. He did not even come to my graduation. I graduated online, so it was not an in-person event, but I texted him about it, and he never responded. I waited an entire month for something from him, but nothing came. I texted my stepmother about this because my father sometimes misses calls and texts, and she replied within 10 minutes, expressing how proud she was of me. She said she would let him know, and it took an entire day to hear from him, which was via a phone call. I spoke with him for a while and said hello to my siblings and stepmother. However, when we were alone again, he began his usual spiel about how he wanted to improve and be more present for me. I just cried because I knew he did not mean it. Christmas came and he tried to call me, but I had set my phone down to clean and did not notice it. I heard my brother's phone ring and did not think much of it until I heard my father's voice and nearly broke down in tears just hearing it. I listened to the conversation, asking my brother to lie and say I was sleeping because I simply could not talk to him. But the usual exchanges happened, and near the end of the call, he began saying he wanted to do better and be there for us. He even mentioned flying us back to see our new stepnephew since my stepsister had recently had a child information I had not even known about. Since then, I have been filled with a whirlwind of anger, frustration, and confusion. I do not want to miss him, but I do at the same time. He has made false promises since establishing his new family, and I feel as though we are no longer his family unless he feels obliged. I hold no animosity towards my step-siblings. They have always treated me kindly since we first met, and my stepmother has continually been sweet to me and my brothers. It is just my father. I did not know where to mention this before, but my brothers are actually my half-siblings from my mother's previous relationship, and he adopted them, giving them his last name. So I am the only one who is biologically his. Perhaps a part of me wishes he cared because I am a piece of him. It does not help that I am a carbon copy of him. My mother used to say I was the female version of him. I cannot look in the mirror for long because I start to see his features on my face and wonder if he disliked seeing himself in me. He could not be a father to me because, to him, I was just him all over again. There are days when something triggers my emotions, and I can feel tears welling up with feelings of missing him. There are nights when I wonder if things had been different, would he have been the father I needed? I am an emotionally sensitive person. I cry over the smallest things, so I am unsure if I am simply being overly sensitive about this situation or if he has indeed been neglectful, as my mother claims. I apologize if anything I wrote was inappropriate. I wrote it while in tears. Story 2. My sister Mary, just 14, is trapped under our mother Sarah's oppressive rules and my aunt's iron fist. You're not Eddie, I won't let you become him. But the more our mom pushes, the more I fear Mary will resent her just like I do. Will my efforts be enough to save her? Warning: long post ahead. The entire situation is frustrating me and I just need to express it. Some background for context: my parents married and had me quite young. My mother, 30 years old female Sarah, married my father, 52 years old male Martin, when she was 17 and gave birth to me at 19. My brother, 24 years old male Eddie, was born when I was almost 6, and our sister, 14 years old female Mary, was born much later. By the time she arrived, I was already dating my now husband, 32 years old male Walter. We have been together for almost 15 years now. My parents separated when Mary was about to turn 6, and it was a very traumatic experience for everyone involved, as we were all subjected to ongoing abuse from my father. My sister and I have severed ties with him, while my brother still maintains a relationship with him, albeit a strained one. My mother interacts with him as little as possible and remarried about 3 years ago. Fortunately, my sister is the only one who never experienced any violence or abuse from Martin. She was too young, and he was still very caring towards her. Eddie was frequently punished through physical beatings. while my mother and I endured severe psychological abuse from him until their separation and even for a while afterward. Those were difficult years, but we eventually moved on. Despite being a victim herself, my mother also inflicted her own form of abuse on me. For as long as I can remember, she has made it her mission to raise me as a perfect child, perfectly obedient, achieving perfect grades, being the perfect sister, daughter, granddaughter, and niece, you name it. My infancy and adolescence consisted of emotional repression, anxiety, and people-pleasing to avoid meltdowns and abuse. Consequently, I was always very well behaved, received good grades, and never caused any trouble at home. Today, I have completed college, hold a good job, and live a relatively comfortable life. However, the abuse from both parents has left me emotionally repressed, emotionally fragile, and extremely socially anxious. I have undergone therapy for this, and I have cut Martin out of my life. Additionally, I confronted my mother and established many necessary boundaries that I was never allowed in my youth. Today, we maintain a positive relationship with mutual respect, and she has changed significantly in how she interacts with me. My siblings often claim that I am the favorite child because she tends to listen to me more and treats me more as an equal. On the other hand, my brother was not raised in the same way. My mother favored him considerably, and the rules that applied to me did not apply to him. Much of the responsibility of caring for him fell to me as we grew older, and my mother rarely punished him, if at all, despite the fact that he misbehaved far worse than I ever would have dared. My brother disliked school, received shortened groundings, earned terrible grades, and even failed a year with no consequences from my mother. Martin would beat him when he misbehaved, but my brother eventually lost concern about it and believed the punishment was worth it if he could do as he pleased. Consequently, Eddie exploited his incompetence and was never expected to help with chores at home or even with my sister. The entire responsibility for her care fell on me until she turned 5. This resulted in him becoming irresponsible, reckless, and emotionally damaged. He also developed a computer addiction which continues to this day. Currently, he is engaged, has a child, and holds a good job. However, this positive change is quite recent. Prior to that, he caused our mother a great deal of trouble. He was unwilling to work, lied about everything, and even abandoned jobs entirely. He was kicked out of the house twice, leading our mother to lose hope and attempt to rely on me to resolve issues, which I quickly shut down. She had given up when things began to improve, but his behavior over the years has led her to believe that my sister will follow in his footsteps. This is where my frustration arises. Despite being a handful when she was little, i.e. misbehaving and typical childhood antics, Mary has always been exceptionally kind, intelligent, and a genuinely good kid. She is respectful, studious, affectionate, and both my brother and I share a strong bond with her. We feel very protective of her because we do not want her to experience any form of injustice or abuse as we did. Unfortunately, Mary has also faced her own challenges. When I moved out to live independently and later with my husband, my mother had to rely heavily on family help to support my siblings and rebuild her life after the separation. This assistance primarily came from my aunt, 53 years old, female Erica, and both of my grandmothers, one of whom, 72 years old, female Diva, resides with Erica. My aunt has no children and is unmarried. She helped raise one of our cousins, 28 years old, female, the only child of my now-deceased younger aunt, who is now married and living independently. From the time my sister was 6 until very recently, my aunt has been very involved in her education and overall upbringing. The issue is that my aunt is even stricter than my mother ever was with me. My cousin has her own horror stories, but my aunt behaves as though one is serving in the army. She believes that children these days lack intelligence, are being ruined by television and smartphones, and must be governed with an iron fist to become decent contributors to society. Extreme obedience is demanded. No television, no smartphones, study all day and complete all household chores, stop reading books constantly, go do something else. Extracurricular activities are mandatory regardless of interest because I am paying for them and one must be grateful. Why are you not happy? Do not cry, stop showing weakness. Remain silent and do not talk back. Do you dislike this? Expect a meltdown. While my mother did her best to rebuild her life, my sister's upbringing was largely left in my aunt's hands. My mother experienced a period of financial dependence on her, and my aunt has always provided support. Therefore, even today, my mother is reluctant to confront Erica about her extreme treatment of my sister. Consequently, Mary has learned that expecting our mother to defend her or come to her aid is futile. Instead, she has sought help from me and now my brother, too. As my aunt's treatment has become increasingly unreasonable, I have finally managed to persuade my mother to allow Mary to change schools so that she can spend her days at my house instead of my aunt's. My husband works from home, and the two of them have always gotten along well. I have always intervened on behalf of my sister whenever possible. I argue with my mother, convincing her that she can sometimes be overly harsh or unreasonable, and I remind her that she is punishing Mary for things Eddie did when he was young. My mother and aunt are so fearful that Mary will suddenly transform into the way my brother used to be that they are preemptively denying her anything they perceive as responsible for his poor behavior, rather than recognizing that the fault lies entirely with his upbringing. Mary is being restricted, prohibited, and constrained from all sides, despite being far from a troubled child. I have been trying, now alongside my brother, to demonstrate to my mother that it does not have to be this way. However, this fear continues to persist, and a bad day for my mother can often result in the loss of liberties for my sister without any prior justification. I have told my mother countless times that one day Mary will resent her, just as she currently resents our aunt. Unfortunately, it seems that she is not listening, and I am exhausted from trying to prevent this from occurring. My sister's situation has improved significantly since she began staying with us in February. She appears happier and is pulling away from what seemed like a major downward spiral into depression. We have established rules and structures she needs as a teenager, but we also listen to her, encourage her interests, and try to engage her with activities she enjoys whenever possible. However, my mother believes this is insufficient. She continuously confiscates Mary's phone, even though she cannot use it at school or when I am not home. She insists that Mary exhaustively interact at family gatherings, even though there is no one near her age for her to relate to. My mother continues to assert that my sister is a zombie with no interests apart from her phone, despite the fact that the reality could not be further from the truth, and I attempt to showcase this to her every opportunity I get. I am weary, I can only do so much. I am not her mother and I do not possess the authority to enact many changes. However, my sister is going to harbor resentment and the future is much closer than my mother realizes. I will allow this to happen because I cannot keep telling my sister to try to understand her mother's perspective when I myself can no longer do so. My mother is not a bad person. She requires therapy and perhaps a diagnosis and should stop heeding her sister's opinions. Nonetheless, I will not continue to strive to protect her relationship with my sister from being damaged. I believe she deserves to face some consequences for her actions. Story 3. My ex-girlfriend claimed I felt pressured into having sex despite asking for it herself. I was confused. How can one time wouldn't hurt feel coercive after she initiated? Now she won't explain, leaving me questioning where I went wrong. Can two perspectives truly exist? Before we ended our relationship a few weeks ago, we were together for a year, taking things relatively slowly. Throughout our time together, we engaged in kissing and other activities, but we never went beyond oral sex until a few weeks before our breakup. To present her perspective as accurately as possible, here is some relevant context. We saw each other infrequently, so we would often engage in risque conversations online, with both of us sometimes expressing things like "I am so wet" or "I am so hard," among other phrases. We would also express these sentiments when we were being intimate in person. A few weeks prior to our first sexual encounter, after several months of this type of intimate conversation, she conveyed to me that when I said such things in person, she felt as though I was expecting something from her, which caused her to feel pressured. I was completely unaware that it appeared that way, as we both talked in this manner quite frequently. After she explained her feelings, I recognized that certain types of risque talk were perceived differently than I had intended, depending on the timing, such as right after being intimate. I never intended to give that impression, so after she informed me about this, I sincerely apologized and ceased making such comments. A few months before we had sex, my ex expressed that she was now comfortable and ready to engage in sexual activity, but she was extremely afraid of getting pregnant. Following that conversation, remarks about actually having sex began to find their way into our intimate discussions. Some examples of things we both stated were, "One time would not hurt," or "I wish we had condoms," and similar expressions. On the day we had sex, we were kissing at my place and we were again engaging in intimate conversation. I said things like, "One time would not hurt," and so on, comments we typically exchanged with one another. For months, we had discussed the possibility of having sex, and now I was checking whether she was comfortable with it. She flirted back in a way that suggested she wanted to proceed but was too frightened of the risk of pregnancy. To ensure that nothing progressed beyond her comfort level, I asked her, "Do you want to have sex or are you afraid of getting pregnant?" To which she responded with an uncertain answer leaning towards fear of pregnancy. After that, I completely stopped any intimate conversation about sex to avoid making her uncomfortable and inadvertently pressuring her. I believe that my comments this time were different since I paused and checked in before my intimate conversation could pressure her into anything she did not want to do. We went out and returned to my place after several hours, where we were engaged in kissing and dry humping, something we had been comfortable with for some time. She pulled back and said, "One time would not hurt," indicating that she wanted to have sex. Given her previous uncertainty, I asked her if she was sure several times. She affirmed that she wanted to proceed every time I inquired. We had sex and later she left. I asked her if she regretted it and she told me she did not, expressing that she wanted to do it again. I was regretting it for unrelated reasons, a different story altogether, but she convinced me that it was acceptable and that I should not regret it. Afterward, we made plans to have sex several times, all of which fell through for various reasons, such as unexpected visitors or incorrect condom sizes, etc. You might say that she was simply agreeing without truly meaning it, but every single time she appeared extremely enthusiastic about it. What I am trying to convey is that everything indicated she was comfortable with the situation. She initiated it, reassured me that she wanted to proceed when I asked if she was sure multiple times, did not change her mind even after I checked in later, and we both planned to have sex several times afterward, with her displaying enthusiasm across the board. After we broke up, my ex revealed that she recognized there were unresolved issues in our relationship, stating that she often felt pressured. I apologized sincerely and asked her to elaborate. She mentioned that throughout our relationship, I occasionally said things that made her feel pressured into certain actions, the risque talk, clarifying that while she never completely opposed certain acts, she simply did not feel like engaging at times. This was something she had previously explained to me, so it did not take me by surprise. Here is the kicker. She said she felt pressured into having sex with me. I simply could not understand how, considering everything I detailed above. She stated that comments like "one time would not hurt" made her feel pressured. I do not comprehend. I checked in with her and stopped before my comments could push her into anything. She also expressed that if she said no, she believed I would become upset, but she had initiated it. I want to emphasize that I have never been upset when she was unwilling to engage in something with me. I cannot stress this enough. I have reassured her of this on multiple occasions throughout our relationship. Whenever she indicated that she did not want to do something, I would always respond with something like, "That is okay," in a cheerful tone, and we would find something else to do. I attributed her feelings to an issue we faced earlier, wherein she would assume I was upset over minor things like not holding my arm while walking, but in truth, I did not think twice about it. I honestly do not know what I may have done that appeared as if I were upset, and she could only tell me that I seemed mad. Overall, I could not grasp what I did that made her feel pressured into having sex. After she told me that something I did had felt pressuring before we had sex, I completely ceased that behavior. Then, while we were engaged in intimate conversation, I ensured that my remarks regarding sex would not pressure her into anything she was uncomfortable with. Later, when she initiated, I checked in with her multiple times. After she departed, I checked in once more. I truly feel that I did everything I could. I deeply regret having said anything that could have pressured her in the past, but I honestly had no idea I came off that way and stopped as soon as she informed me. It feels as though she is retroactively altering the narrative now that we have broken up. I even asked her if she would have regretted having sex with me had we still been together, and she answered, "No, but I would not do it again," which is fair. A few weeks after she conveyed all this, I reached out to her with the intention of reconciling our viewpoints. I did not contest how she felt at all. I simply wanted to understand her perspective. I texted her stating that I feel I did everything possible to make her comfortable, primarily explaining my viewpoint, and why I found it challenging to comprehend hers. She responded with statements such as, "You did not pressure me. Some things you said made me feel pressured. What does this imply?" I do not remember much. All I recall is that I felt pressured and still consented. It is done. I do not know how I felt pressured. I just did. I do not know what you want me to say. I felt pressured. I am sorry when I inquired about how she felt pressured if she was the one who initiated. I do not remember. I do not know. Throughout the dialogue, she repeatedly stated, "I am sorry I felt that way," despite me assuring her that she had nothing to apologize for and I merely wanted to understand her feelings. Overall, it was not a very constructive conversation. She has always struggled with communication and memory, so I am unsure what I expected. I have discussed this with a few others who provided insights suggesting that I did not pressure her, while at the same time she felt pressured. I do not understand how these two situations can coexist since she specifically claims that what I said made her feel pressured. I feel like I either pressured her and am unaware of how, or she is retroactively changing the narrative since we broke up. Now I turn to you. How can both her perspective and mine exist simultaneously? Brief summary: during our relationship, I would accidentally pressure my ex when making certain types of intimate comments. She was still comfortable with the activities we engaged in, but there were moments when she did not particularly want to participate. After she conveyed her feelings, I completely ceased that behavior. Before we had sex for the first time, we discussed the possibility of sex. I made sure to check in with her to confirm her desire before my comments could pressure her as they had before. She provided an ambiguous answer but later initiated sex hours later. She maintained that she did not regret it, wanted to engage again, and made plans to do so. After the breakup, she stated that she felt pressured into it, and I cannot discern how her viewpoint and mine can coexist. Story 4. After a whirlwind year, I fell in love with Evan, who escaped an abusive marriage to a vile partner. "You're my escape," they said, and just like that, I became their family. But just when we thought we could breathe, a gun was brandished at Thanksgiving. Now we're on the road, searching for a fresh start on the West Coast. What new adventures await? My past year of life has been utterly insane, and I am trying to wrap my head around it. 1 year ago, I met the most amazing person on the same day I submitted my 2 weeks' notice. They came up to the bar where I worked and tried to get my attention, but to no avail. Eventually, they managed to stop me, asked me for a piece of paper, and the next thing I knew, I was texting them back saying, "You are cute too." We texted for a while and decided to meet up for Turkish coffee at 10 p.m. instead of going to a bar. At the coffee shop, this person named Evan told me everything about themselves, and our lives could not be more similar. Both of us were adopted, our parents had the same name, we had crazy siblings, shared the same goals and standards in life, hobbies, and knowledge that balanced each other. It was an insane fireworks of connectivity. However, there was one issue. Evan was in a polyamorous relationship with their husband, Durpo, and another woman. I was open to this and explored being part of that relationship dynamic for a little while. I met him and instantly disliked him. Evan told me more about their relationship with him, and I came to discover that he was a certified freak. He had a wealth of inappropriate material, a violent temper, and made disgusting comments towards Evan, which fueled my anger. I felt so jealous that they would remain with this piece of trash guy. Evan understood the rules of their polyamorous relationship, but told Durpo that I was off limits. This caused Durpo to make mean and derogatory comments at my expense, but Evan stood firm against him, practically telling Durpo to fuck off while making fun of her. Evan and I spent days talking to each other. I learned they were visiting their sister for the birth of her third child. Evan took me to meet their siblings, nieces, and nephews. The whole family instantly liked me and saw me as a goofy aunt. Evan took me to the zoo, came to work with me, hung out with my friends, lived it up on the apartment kitchen floor, and fell in love with me. Our intimacy was like fireworks, pow pow, boom boom boom, gada screams of oh my god. That summer, I fell in love with someone on my kitchen floor. On the final night before they were supposed to leave, they informed me of more things about Durpo. Upon discovering he abused them and their dog, hit them, yelled at them, and other disgusting acts, Evan had enough. I asked if they would stay with me so we could figure things out between us, and they actually chose me. I couldn't believe it. They flew to their home state of South Carolina and drove back up in less than 2 days. When Evan returned, they promised to give me a real proposal, not just the one they had promised me when they left. I cleaned my entire apartment in anticipation of the arrival of my fiancé and their dog. Yes, fiancé, they proposed to me while we were together for those 2 weeks. The next thing I knew, I had the family I had always dreamed of. Durpo continued his abusive behavior and called us both disgusting names, but I picked up the phone and responded so strongly that he tried to change genders. Yes, that is real. Evan filed for divorce not long after, but we had to return to South Carolina to collect more of their belongings. Durpo would not let us in when we arrived. Instead, he called the police on us. 5 police cars and an armored truck came into the neighborhood and asked us questions. Picture 2 people wearing rainbow shorts and t-shirts that said, "Don't be a cuntosaurus." The cops left immediately after realizing who the real threat was, but they pointed Durpo down with a gun he had laid out on the table. Durpo was armed the entire time we tried to enter the house, and while I wasn't allowed inside, Evan managed to bring out all of their things. We stayed with their amazing friend, an up-and-coming hairstylist in the area. We attempted to go to the beach but were both too in shock to enjoy it after what had happened. We returned home and hunkered down for a while. I started working at a winery, which quickly became a nightmare, and I sustained an injury on the job. I had to leave my position, and Evan was released from their corporate job. During that time, we found a puppy to bring into our family, a little dachshund named Waffles, to match their older sister, MM. Evan had been out of contact with their family for a while but mustered the courage to reach out after leaving Durpo. This created a whole slew of new issues, as their mother was a sore spot for them in some ways. Evan set boundaries with them and began communicating with them on a semi-regular basis. We learned that Durpo had blocked Evan from the entire family without their knowledge, and letters were never delivered. After meeting the family, we were invited to attend holidays. With the election looming, we both had moments of panic as we understood the stakes involved in our lives, so we decided to uproot and bought a camper to escape any troubles. Using my life savings, I purchased us a camper, sold my car for a truck, and we were set to leave our home state sooner rather than later. When my 25th birthday came, Evan made it a day to remember. All of my little hobbies, visiting Legoland and seeing my college friends culminated in a wonderful night when Evan finally proposed to me. It was a day I will never forget. I cried like a baby as Evan placed the most beautiful ring on my hand, silver and blue with two smaller diamonds accenting the main attraction. Life could not have been more perfect. Then reality hit us again. We attended a family Thanksgiving that started out pleasant. However, the day soon turned into another nightmare when our brother-in-law had a manic episode and brandished a gun at Evan's mother, father, brother Evan, the brother-in-law's child, and me. The brother-in-law left with his kids for the hospital, while Evan's sister was there with their third child due to an allergy. Evan and I returned to our life, packing things up, giving away most of our furniture, and practically abandoning our apartment in late January. We stayed with Evan's parents for a while until the situation became too overwhelming. Our camper needed extensive repairs, which we invested more money into. I began to dip into my emergency funds, which quickly dwindled. During our time refurbishing, Evan's mother demonstrated that she had not changed much since Evan's last disagreement with them. Evan's younger brother and his wife have a son with autism. The brother and his wife engaged in frequent marijuana use and showed signs of child neglect. They left urine and feces around the house, did not give their child necessary medication, and the child only had a few pairs of clothing. Evan's brother lost his job at a dispensary and returned to drinking. Frequent house visits revealed that the situation was worsening. Both parents neglected to take their child to his speech therapist, so we ended up having to do it. While there alone, the speech therapist asked us several questions, and we realized she knew that the brother and his wife were lying to her. They reported them to Child Protective Services for child endangerment, and Evan's parents kicked us out of their home, with Evan's mother being indecisive about whether we should stay or go. Eventually, we left. We have been on the road for several weeks now, engaging in an endless job search while looking for a sign of what to do next. With our finances dwindling, we sought hope or guidance, and the West Coast seemed to finally be calling us. The RV park where we are staying refunded our money and wished us good luck in our next chapter. We have a 4.5-day drive ahead, and I cannot wait to see what the sun looks like on a West Coast beach.